What if I told you that the biggest shift in church attendance isn't that people are leaving, it's that they're actually showing up more than ever? I mean, that's a real surprise, right? Like for decades, church leaders tried to make faith appealing, right? Coffee bars, cool bands, great speakers. And for a while, it worked. But something massive is shifting in real time right now. And most churches haven't caught up. No, you don't need to serve bad coffee and recruit off-key bands. But if you miss out on what's happening right now, you'll never reach the people you want to be reaching. So what's going on? Well, here's the shift. 20 years ago, people were not spiritually hungry like they are now. So attractional church, seeker-sensitive church arrives. You had to convince them, guys, you got to eat. Well, today, people are hungry, right? The culture's broken and they've researched the diet you're offering. And now when they show up at your church, what do they want you to do? They want you to feed them. So in this video, I'm going to show you why attractional church worked actually quite well for a season, why a lot of it is now outdated. And finally, I'll share with you what you should be doing instead. So first, let me say something that I don't think everybody's going to be happy with. I can't wait to read the comments on this. Okay. I actually think the attractional church was a gift. I think it served a purpose for a season. It was necessary. It was a cultural moment that was different than the moment we're in 20 years ago. God used it. But starting about a decade ago, things started to change. Change number one, the foyer moved. All right. So what happened about a decade ago is the internet changed everything. You got a few things that came together at once. Number one, broadband. Number two, mobile first. Number three, everybody with smartphones. Okay. So what happened was like 25 years ago, if you wanted to explore Christianity, you had to actually show up at a church, right? A friend had to invite you, or you had to subscribe to the cassette tape ministry, which nobody really did. But then with the advent of broadband internet, mobile, Wi-Fi everywhere, by the time you get into the 2010s, you start to see people exploring spirituality on its own. So what happened was the foyer moved from Sunday being a first-time experience to, no, my first-time experience is right here on my phone, on my device. By the way, that's my wife. Okay, she's amazing. Anyway, so Sunday was a first-time experience, and now it's like, no, your phone is your first-time experience. So 15 years ago, people came in cold. Today, they come in warm, they come in ready, they come in researched, and they are ready to learn. They know what they're getting into. Then there was a second change. People opened up spiritually. People, you can see the data on this from Barna and other groups, Pew Research, etc. People are more spiritually open than they have been in a generation. So a generation ago, 25 years ago, it was the era of Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, right? And they were the new atheists, and new atheism was on the rise and everything. And people were deeply suspicious of Christianity. We got into deconversion and it was becoming very, very secular. Well, you fast forward to today, and Gen Z teens and millennials are leading the way with 74% being highly spiritually open. In fact, even 66% of Gen Z adults say they are spiritually open. There's something changing in the culture and people are going, no, we're actually really open and the new atheism is on the decline and people are spiritual again. Now, what this means is that when they engage in your church, they're open and they're ready to go. They're like, yep, we're here. We're spiritually open and will you please help us? Then there's the third change. Okay, people aren't just turning to spirituality, they're actually turning to Jesus. So about a decade ago, people were like, New Age and Buddhism and meditation. And yeah, that's still happening. Now, new Barna data shows that the number of US adults who affirm that they've made a personal commitment to Jesus that is still important in their life today, and by the way, Barna's asked this question for 40 years, it's very orthodox, has rebounded from an all-time low of 54% to 66% today. That's a 12-point jump in 3 years. You see this in Unite Us, which is the college revival movement that's happening in baptisms. You see it in outpourings. You see it in churches. People are hungry, they're open, and they're turning to the church. And people who have made that commitment to Jesus, that's a 12-point jump in 3 years. It's crazy. There is a move going on right now. And we got to figure out what to do about that. Now, before I get into solutions, I would love to hear from you. I just shared some data, but I would love to know, what are you seeing in your church or in the culture around you? Is that resonating? Are you seeing that people are showing up hungrier, that they're showing up researched? Are young adults more spiritually curious where you are? Are you noticing people returning to church? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your perspective and see if you are seeing these trends at your church or not. So then the question becomes, well, what does all of this mean? If the attractional model is fading, if it's not carrying what it used to carry, if it doesn't need to do what it used to do, what is replacing it? Well, here's what leading churches are doing right now, and what you can start doing as early as this Sunday. So these changes mean that when people show up at your church, they're ready to go deeper, faster. So the first thing you can do is pray with boldness. Okay. People don't want a polite God. They want a powerful one. They are ready when they show up. They're hungry. So you can pray in anticipation for your service. You can pray in your service. People are ready to go on a journey. So I would say start with prayer. Pray with boldness. Secondly, you can preach deeper. Okay. Now, don't assume they'll be bored. Assume they're starving. Offer real spiritual practices, worship, fasting, prayer, maybe even confession, okay? And so what you want to do is you want to design your services, you want to think about your services when you're putting them together as an encounter, not as entertainment. I'm not saying you can't do like special songs or something like that, but it's not for entertainment purposes. You don't need to be driving a motorcycle on stage anymore. What you want is you want an encounter. You want to try to get into that liminal space, that very sacred space between heaven and earth, where people have an encounter with the living God, with the Holy Spirit. Another thing you want to do is you want to cut the fluff, okay? You don't need gimmicks anymore. Yeah, you don't want to be boring, but you want to maximize what's real. People are showing up, and it's kind of like they skipped a step saying, I've already been introduced. Can you take me to the real thing? Now, I've got a few things I want to share, because you might jump into the deep end and lose everybody if you just follow what I've said so far. So there's some important caveats I want to share with you. But before you go, one big caution: there is a balance, okay? You want to immerse them, but you don't want to lose them. You're still reaching, hopefully, unchurched people, not just recycled Christians. So don't go so deep that people who don't know how to swim end up drowning, okay? There are elements of the attractional approach that remain valuable. So I want to share a few of those. First of all, you want to assume intelligence, but not background. Yeah, people are researched. They've used AI, they've Googled, they've read books, okay? And they're curious, and they probably already scoped you out online. People may be spiritually hungry, but they probably don't know basic Christian concepts. So you want to create in your services quick on-ramps for spiritual experiences. For prayer, for example, most Americans pray, but you might say, hey, we're going to pray now. You can simply listen or join in silently. Like, you want to create that invitation so that you acknowledge that there are new people in the room. With scripture, you want to give people a backup. So if you're talking about, let's say, King David, okay, you can say, hey, we're going to go back in history 3,000 years. We meet a king of the most powerful nation in the world, Israel at the time. His name's David. He's around 60. And at the time when kings normally go to war, he's back at the palace looking out over the roof, and we meet him there. Now, you did two things with that. Number one, for anybody who's never read the Bible, you've anchored the story historically in about 15 seconds. And secondly, for all your Christians, they probably don't know David was 60, and they're trying to figure out where it fits. One of my Old Testament profs said, the Old Testament is like a puzzle. Christians kind of know all the pieces, but they don't know how they fit together. So when you do that, you're serving Christians and non-Christians. So you want to make it friendly that way. The other thing you want to do is you want to avoid Christian insider language. So you don't want to use jargon or become, the Christian Culture Club, or live by acronyms. The EPEFC is meeting this Friday. When you're doing theology, by the same token, you don't want to lose people. If you're using a term like sanctification, define it. Again, a lot of Christians don't know what that means, and non-Christians don't know what that means. If you're using atonement, explain it. So don't ignore felt needs either, okay? You don't want to just dip into some seminary class where all of a sudden you're exegeting and parsing Greek aorist verbs, okay? People come with real life problems. And I got this advice from a mentor years ago. He said, do you preach to unchurched people's problems or church people's problems? He said, just talk to people. Like, Christians have marriage problems. Christians feel alone. Christians struggle with depression. Unchristians, non-Christians struggle with depression. All right, just talk to people. You'll always have an audience. So you want to connect their struggles to their deeper spiritual truths. And good news, the Bible does this, right? That's what the Bible does. So people are spiritually hungry. It's your job now. You can feed them. That is our task. So what have we learned? Well, we've learned the attractional era has taught us to invite people to the table. Today's challenge is different. They're already at the table and they're ready to be served a real meal. The question isn't whether they'll come. The question is whether you're offering what will satisfy their spiritual hunger. So that's it for this video. If you haven't already, be sure to jump into the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. What are you seeing? Let me know in the comments.